This is Harry Davies from Mirror Fighting, and I'm joined by the great Dr. Mike ahead of his professional boxing debut against Chris Avila on the undercard of Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva on October 29th. First of all, Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, really excited for this event. Encourage everyone to check out not only the main event, but also this incredibly stacked undercard.
Awesome. And yeah, like you said, there's a lot to cover on this card. But first of all, I want to go into your fight with Chris. You already had an exhibition, but this is your pro debut. He's an MMA veteran. He's a close teammate of Nate Diaz. How did this fight come around and why Chris?
Yeah, so initially I was scheduled to be on the Jake Paul undercard in August in Madison Square Garden, but with that event sort of having some troubles and my opponent that I had scheduled for that fight also kind of falling apart, the only people left that were still willing to go at it was Chris Avila and myself. And I really am appreciative of him giving me the opportunity to fight someone as seasoned as he is, because I could have fought other YouTubers and gone that whole influencer boxing route, but really I want to test myself. I want to put my abilities to a really serious challenge and see, is my trainer really talking me up, or does he truly believe that I'm ready to enter the fight game? And I think this is the perfect opportunity to test myself.
Do you think maybe that's what boxing fans would have perceived if you went down the YouTuber route for your next fight, given that, you'd already fought I-dubs in your first exhibition? Do you feel like by facing Chris, a lot of, I'm sure your friends and your family, but boxing fans as well, kind of gone, God, like Dr. Mike's actually fighting, an MMA veteran who's already, made his pro debut in Anthony Taylor. Is that kind of the route, the reason why you went down the route to fight Chris?
It's definitely part of it. I think that the more you start thinking about pleasing other people and the boxing fans in general, you start losing your own journey in this process. And for me, I wanted to challenge myself, and I felt like that challenge was only going to come from someone who was either incredibly athletic, like a pro athlete, or a pro fighter, like Chris Avila. So I wanted that challenge. The guys that I'm sparring in my gym are either pro athletes or amateur athletes with a lot of fight experience. So I feel like I'm ready for this caliber of fight. My trainer, who I entrust my life to, says I'm ready for it. And I'm really excited for October 29th to be able to show the world that, there are some YouTubers that are doing this for clout and just to step in the ring and say that they've done it. We're trying to respect the game and put in that real work and show that we are respectful fighters.
And of course, Chris actually fought Anthony Taylor on Jake Paul's last fight, I believe, against Tyron Woodley. He won that one by a close decision. Have you managed to watch this fight? And if so, were you impressed by what you saw?
Absolutely. I watched the fight. Going 8 rounds is impressive to be able to last that long and continue the pace that Chris Avila kept up. We definitely see some opportunities for me to be able to get in there. Also, I am a taller fighter than he is. I believe I have like 5 inches on him, a little reach advantage that we're definitely going to take advantage of. But I think it's going to be really close. I think it's going to be an exciting fight for the fans because both of us want to scrap. And I think when you have that in two fighters, you're going to get a really good outcome for the fans to have a really fun fight.
And obviously, like you say there, Avila's a guy who, I believe in his UFC and Bellator days, he fought as low as 145 pounds. If I'm not mistaken, this fight is at 185. And like you said, you have a bit of height on him there. Do you expect to have a big power advantage in the ring, given you're naturally going to be the bigger guy?
A lot of people after seeing my fight with I-Dubs talk about my right hand. And absolutely, I want to be able to use my right hand and show that power. But in this training camp, we've put in a lot of work to show the combination, the speed, the ability to mix in my left hand more. And honestly, I think people will be surprised by the boxing IQ and the boxing ability that we're hoping to put out there with this fight, just to show that absolutely there's power. I've always been a guy who's been lifting really strong, but this is more about showing that I understand what boxing is. I understand pacing. I understand positioning in the ring, and show a higher level IQ in this fight.
And of course, a big reason why Chris is such a big name in the MMA and boxing world is because he's been training with Nate Diaz, who's now a free agent and looking to make his boxing move. Do you feel like maybe a win against Chris could cause Nate to try and come and avenge his teammate? And is that maybe if you get the W, the name that might be on the tip of your tongue for your post fight interview, or are you kind of just taking this one as it is?
I think that I'm not ruling anything out. I think a fight with a legend like Nate Diaz would be incredible. But it's hard for me to look past Chris Avila as a veteran who's never been knocked out. You know, at the end of the day, I have to be a realist. I'm a doctor, I'm a YouTuber, someone who's been training really hard for the last year. So I have to keep my focus lasered in on Chris Avila. And if that win comes, then there's going to be a lot of decisions to be made after, because I think the opportunities are going to start flowing in.
Of course. And just mentioning Nate there, what did you make? I don't know how big of an MMA fan you are, but I'm sure you've seen he recently fought his last UFC fight. He's been, back for a move to boxing for ages. Him and his brother Nick have both got some of the best boxing in the UFC. What are your kind of thoughts on him going to the boxing? Do you feel like he'll have success in the ring?
I think it really depends on who he takes on. You know, I watched this fight with Ferguson, and it was great to see him get that win as his final fight for the UFC contract. But I think that if he goes in against, like I saw Adrian Broner actually challenge him the other day on social media, I think if he goes in against a guy like that, he's going to be setting himself up for failure, only because of on an experience standpoint. So if he does step into the ring with an athlete, a YouTuber, perhaps even another former UFC fighter, he's going to be able to get his legs under him as a boxer, and I think that will help develop him as a fighter. There's a reason why you see guys like KSI taking easy fights to get into their current shape before taking on a Jake Paul or someone who's already gotten their feet wet and has a lot of ring experience. Because it takes time to develop that. Even coming from a very related sport like UFC, boxing is different. We've seen that with McGregor, Mayweather. We've seen that even with Woodley and Jake Paul. So I think it's important that we understand that while these sports are related, they're still quite different in how you have to move forward training-wise.
And just touching on KSI there, were you surprised that after his, two fights in one night, he actually did a poll on Twitter and he listed Tyron Woodley, Dylan Dennis, another YouTube boxer, and Slim, and yourself as, who should he fight next? Were you surprised to see your name on there?
I was, just because KSI and I have never really had any interaction, but I think his team sees that we're taking this seriously. They understand the value that we bring with the huge social media following that we have. We're also quite different in this space in that, a lot of content creators that are good at boxing tend to have smaller numbers because they are somewhat really focused on boxing and not so much content creation. And despite putting a tremendous emphasis on our boxing training, we're still putting out tons of content, making 60, 100 million views a month. And I think that's really unique in this boxing space. So if we can show a great showing against Chris Avila here, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities and a lot of tough decisions to be made on what to do moving forward.
And obviously in your exhibition against Ian, fans were very impressed with the skills that you had. KSI recently had 2 fights in one night, and there's a lot of controversy got with the card. He was supposed to fight someone else, it got cancelled, but he ended up fighting 2 guys in one night. What did you make of these 2 wins?
Yeah, I think it's hard to make anything out of it because he so clearly overmatched his opponents. Swarms, like, it's fine for KSI to set that up. I kind of put it more on Swarms and his training team. You really shouldn't be putting in a fighter on 2 weeks' notice who's going to run away and not really take the fight seriously, because I, as a health professional, really worry about those situations. I would never step into the ring unless I was absolutely confident that I could protect myself. And forgetting whether or not Swarms could win that fight, he wasn't able to protect himself, and his team should have known that. Nothing about KSI, but more so about Swarms' team really should have been thinking about his protection, his safety. The other professional guy, I don't know what that was. That was really strange. I don't know how they selected him. Look, KSI needed to get his feet wet. He absolutely did. He showed that he's a powerful, strong fighter. I would like to see who he fights next, to see what he's capable of, because a lot of times we'll see people like Austin McBroom really outmatch Bryce Hall, right? And then people give Austin McBroom so much credit for being an amazing fighter, but you can only know how good of a fighter someone is based on who else they're fighting. And when you're fighting someone like Bryce Hall, who isn't the greatest boxer, he's a very strong guy, young guy, very passionate, but not a very technically skilled boxer, it's easy to walk all over him and then to get into a fight with Gibb and get absolutely dominated. So I think that the only way we'll really know if KSI is going to step up his boxing caliber is based on who he fights next.
Obviously, a lot's been made of his, boxing skills, because he's got so much else on the side with his music career, his YouTube career. How do you assess his skill? Obviously, it's hard because of the opponents he had, but looking at yourself and him, it's quite similar builds and size and weights. Would a fight between you and him be obviously one that I know you're interested in, but how do you kind of assess your skills against his and think they'd match up against each other?
With this YouTuber landscape, it's really tough because we all have such small number of fights. I think you got to really look at the measurables, the heights, the weights, the experience that one has. I mean, he's a tough guy. He's going to be fast. He's going to be strong. He held up really well against Logan Paul, especially in the early rounds where Paul had a lot of strength, a lot of energy, and KSI was able to take that and continue on with really good stamina. I think that's what's going to really set him apart from a lot of the YouTubers out there, that he has the stamina to keep going. He has the strength in later rounds, because that's really the difference between pro fighters and amateur fighters. The ability to go, 4 to 6 rounds, 3-minute rounds, and keep up that pace. And it looks like KSI is able to do that. So I think KSI is a great boxing future ahead for him. And if I was to meet him in the ring, that would be an amazing situation for both of us.
And we kind of touched on it there with his two opponents, but even though you've not had loads of fights under your belt, as a doctor, the risks of combat sports, boxing, MMA, and CTE has come to light in recent years. Do you think the current safety guidelines, such as the medical suspensions after fight, are sufficient in boxing and MMA, and specifically in boxing, because you kind of get these ridiculous mismatches, which, like you say, you could come out of the ring with a serious injury? And do you feel like sometimes they're a bit too extreme, the kind of levels in competition between the two opponents in the ring?
I would say most boxing organizations are really sharp in preventing these types of mismatches. Like, even for my fight, there's a really strict 5-pound max difference on the weigh-in that is allowed. That's why the previous Jake Paul fight fell apart, because the boxing commission was trying to keep fighters safe. So I think they're waking up and realizing that we need to keep boxers safe. Even I was watching the fight, with Fundora this weekend on Showtime, and they were like, the referee Jack Reese came up and told Campo that, hey, you need to show me something because I don't want you getting hurt in there. His head was kind of getting wobbled around, and I'm appreciative of that, because in boxing, what separates it from MMA, the dangers that fighters face there, is in boxing, it's the number of punches you're taking over and over. It's not that one punch knockout that really does you in. It's the continuous nature of getting hit in the head. So if you're not protecting yourself, I really love to see the ref step in there and protect fighters. And I think that is going to make the biggest difference. The suspensions after knockouts are really important, but really trying to prevent PEDs, which has been in the news lately, but also preventing going around boxing commissions by going to secondary commissions. Like, they were trying to go to like the Luxembourg Boxing Commission for this last fight. So that's a mess. I hope that never happens, because that's really how fighters end up getting hurt and losing their lives.
And just going on to this coming fight, you worked with iDubbbz for your exhibition, and now you're working with another big YouTuber, arguably the biggest name in YouTube boxing, in Jake Paul. How has it kind of been? Obviously, we're about just over 2 weeks out now. How has it been, working with Jake and his MVP team in the lead up to this fight?
Yeah, I actually have been only working with the MVP team, not Jake at all. His team has been nothing but professional. What I love about them is that they're incredibly transparent. They're going to tell you what they have. They're going to tell you the offer, and you're going to take it or leave it. It's not anything shady. It's very straightforward. I've become very close and friendly with Amanda Serrano, the champ. I've not only worked with her in the ring, but also just personally as friends with her family. I've seen what it takes to be a pro fighter and the things you have to sacrifice in order to be successful. And watching her step in the ring in Madison Square Garden, I was sitting with her family, just a once in a lifetime experience to see that. I still think she was robbed. I think she deserved that victory. But working with the MVP team has been nothing short of very clean, very transparent, and that's what I stand for, and I'm glad they do as well.
And I'd be silly not to ask, because it'll be shortly after your one. Everyone, the boxing and MMA community is kind of torn down the middle on Jake's fight with Anderson. How do you see it going? I feel like it's a hard one to predict, because Anderson, of the age gap and whatnot, and no one really knows how Jake's going to be. He's almost had over a year at the ring now. How do you see that fight going down?
Yeah, I think it's hard to predict, because it's going to be really random, in that what we know from Jake is that he has tremendous power. And he loves to throw those single power shots. And on Silva's side, you have a very awkward boxer that has an unorthodox movement inside the ring. So if Jake is able to figure out that movement early on, I think he will have a lot of success against Silva. But if Silva can get back to those early days of his, where he's able to shift his weight, move around, and cause a problem for Jake pop shotting him, I think then Silva will have the advantage. So it really depends on whose strategy is going to be more crisp. And not seeing Jake in the ring for almost a year since December, I'm really curious to see what his team has been cooking up in the ring for him in order to prep him for this fight, because I have no idea. I haven't seen him train. I haven't seen him spar. But Silva, that's a beast. So if Jake is able to take this down, I don't think we can no longer say that Jake is a YouTuber. He's most definitely 100% a boxer.
And going back to strategy there, a big thing that I know everyone was shocked by in your last fight is you said you kind of had a strategy, and all of a sudden at the 2-minute mark, the bell sounded, and everyone was kind of like, I know everyone knows what happened now, but I wanted to ask you, was it ever really explained why the rounds were changed in the ring?
Yeah, so all the other fights, our fight was supposed to be as close to professional as possible. We were striving to get 10-ounce gloves approved. We got 12-ounce gloves approved, but we were going to have four rounds, 3-minute rounds. And instead, I didn't even know this when I was in the ring. I was just pacing myself as if it was a 3-minute round. So when I had him on the ropes, I felt like there was going to be so much time, and I didn't need to pounce on him. And I thought I could take my time, poking him apart. But then the bell rang, and I said, oh, wow, my timer must be off in my head because of everything that's going on. In the second round, I clearly looked up and saw that there was 1 minute on the clock. And it was after that round, they took away the timer completely because they changed it now to 2 minutes. They now realized that it was a 2-minute fight. But then after the fourth round, I actually go to hug iDubbbz because I thought it was over. When I sit down, I asked my trainer, like, what round is this? I thought it's over. And he just told me to shut up. We're doing another round. He didn't even know that we were doing a fifth round. And we got up, we did a fifth round. And even after the fight, we're in the back tunnel. We have this on camera with my team. I'm yelling to my team, what happened? I thought it was supposed to be 4 rounds. And some people on my team had such adrenaline rush, they thought it was 4 rounds. They didn't even realize it was a 5-round fight. So a lot of stuff happening in a first fight, 10,000 fans, sold out arena. I've never boxed before like that. So there was a lot of trying to keep your head sharp, steady. And, honestly, I took almost no damage during that fight. Nothing was sore except my knuckles and maybe my shoulders from throwing punches. And that made me really comfortable in understanding that A, I could take a punch, and B, I can deliver one. So with this fight, I want to be a little bit more mobile, a little bit more shifty, a little more creative with my movement, less upright. And I think we're going to have a successful night, October 29th.
And something that was interesting after the fight, I know you and Ian are really on good terms. It was a great event, lots of money raised for charity. But he kind of was jokingly coming out and saying, Dr. Mike, you don't have knockout power. Your punches are like little butterfly kisses. I'm not sure how serious he was being, but obviously, his face maybe told a bit of a different story. What are your kind of thoughts on him jokingly saying,
Ian's the man. I love his sense of humor. Like, I didn't know, because I didn't know Ian prior to this, getting to know him throughout the event. We didn't have that much talk leading up to the fight. It was mostly Anissa, his wife, and I talking. So as far as preparations went. And then once I got there and I got to know Ian, he's such a cool dude. He's very easygoing. He wanted to put on an awesome event. And he saw that I came to be competitive. His competition, his heart, you can't talk down about, because I came to get a knockout and I wasn't able to. So he had a chin on him. He had heart. I mean, I watch boxing matches all day long and I see people go down with easier punches than what Ian was able to take. So a lot of props for him, because even when I would hit him, he would be coming back and tying me up and not really falling on the ropes. So I give him a lot of credit for it. I think that whoever he fights next, they're going to be surprised by how good Ian actually is. Because if he sharpens up a few things, he's going to be dangerous in the YouTube fight game.
Something I was listening to your presser that you did the other day with Chris, and something that I found very interesting. You said, you're working several days in hospital, filming for YouTube, and you got a new podcast on the way, but you still managed to get in, 2 training sessions 6 days a week. How do you do it? And do you ever kind of just sit and think, God, I feel so burnt out? Or, what's that kind of secret to being so busy and still managing to train for a professional debut?
There is no secret. I'm fucking burnt out. There's no secret. It's tough waking up in the mornings. I run to my boxing session. Then 2-3 days a week, I'm sparring. A day of the week, I'm just taking punishment for 5 rounds, where literally MMA fighters are just hitting me and I'm not allowed to hit back, which is why I'm a little bloody today. But, I think it's all for the good of the game, to show people that I'm not doing this to get some views, to make a quick buck. This is really about showing that I want to try to do this right. And it's funny, most people just write me off as a doctor, but I have athletic experience for 8 years. When I was younger, I was taking Taekwondo quite seriously, which is obviously not the same as boxing, but I competed. I went to tournaments. There was talk about me going down the Olympic Taekwondo path. And really, because I went to medical school, I had to give all that up. And this is my last hurrah before I age out of professional sports, that I think I can do this. And I will say, it's kind of what keeps me going is the idea that none of this makes sense. The fact that I watch Showtime fights, and like I was saying, I was watching the fight this Saturday, and in the midst of it, they say, oh, tune in October 29th, Dr. Mike's going to be fighting. That doesn't make sense to me. In reality, I'm privileged. I don't deserve that. But with the opportunity that I've gotten with this privilege and the fact that I have such a big following, I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to give 110%. My coach sees it. I'm pushing through. Actually, my team, that's my strength and conditioning team and nutrition team, is from the UK. They're called Boxing Science. They've been getting me ready, and they don't cut me breaks. They're pushing me full on, and I'm training like all of their pro fighters. So.
I'm expecting this to be a no, because you said, this is your last hurrah, but you mentioned the Taekwondo background there, and you're almost kind of at Olympic level. Would MMA ever be, an option? Because obviously that transcends into that, and I know grappling's a big part of it, so that's another avenue to go down. But have you ever kind of thought, what, maybe before it's all said and done, even if it's, like an exhibition or an amateur fight, you'd like to test yourself in the cage?
I don't think I can. I want to say yes, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think boxing is the last thing that I can pick up, because honestly, even yesterday, I played in a celebrity basketball game with the Brooklyn Nets, and I'm in tip-top shape right now getting ready for the fight. And just doing different movements in basketball, I'm sore today. So like my old body can't handle like taking on multiple sports. But boxing, I think like I understand it well. I think my boxing IQ is going to show, and there is where I can put the majority of my effort.
Awesome. And something I wanted to ask was, the Harlem Boys and Girls Club is obviously a foundation close to you, because you're done it in your full purse for this fight. I want you to kind of just explain why this, this group that you're donating it to, and do you kind of know how much it will be that you're donating, or I guess maybe that comes out after the fight, and just kind of what does this organization mean to you?
Yeah, so I came to the United States as an immigrant from Russia, and we were essentially broke because my father right away went to medical school, and my mom, who was a PhD math professor, was sweeping floors for $5 an hour for us to have food to eat. And the welfare programs here in New York are really what kept us afloat. I still remember with my grandfather making the trips to the welfare office in order to get like some Fruity Loop cereal or something that we couldn't afford at the supermarket, but the welfare offices and these social programs afforded me. Now, I never had the opportunity to go to the Boys and Girls Club, but I know that there's a lot of kids who, if they do not have activities to participate in, really fall by the wayside. And I know how important it is to have social gatherings, sport gatherings, to keep kids moving. I see that as a doctor day in and day out. And the fact that the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem does that is really amazing. My full fight purse, 175,000, minus whatever my trainer and my agency gets. Anything that comes to me is going right to them. I'm not keeping a dollar of it. And then there are like knockout bonuses. If I win that, that's another reason for me to strive to get that knockout going right away to the Boys and Girls Club, because again, not doing this for money. I've been very successful and very lucky to be successful with the YouTube and all of that good stuff. So this is strictly for the love of the game, to show that, YouTubers are no joke. We work hard, and not just YouTubers, but doctors. We work hard in residency. Now we can work hard in the ring too.
And finally, like you said, though, I know it won't be going in your own pocket, but you can have a knockout bonus in this one. I know it's only 4 threes, and he's an MMA veteran. He's never been knocked out. So if you do manage to get him out of there inside 4, it'll be some feat. But how do you kind of predict this one going? I know you've got a big size advantage. You kind of see yourself wearing him down and outputting him over the 4 rounds, or a knockout. I'm guessing you're always looking for it, is always there.
I think that my boxing IQ is going to show in that it's not going to be a one-hand mega power shot like a Jake Paul would normally get. I think it's going to be a flurry of combinations that he's not going to expect from someone my size. I think my speed is going to surprise him, and I think that's how we'll ultimately get that knockout punch. Round 2 or 3 is what I'm aiming for.